BMAX has upgraded the Y11. This is the BMAX Y11 Plus that now has Jasper Lake in it. So it's got the Sauron N5100. It's a quad core, maximum turbo is 2.8 gigahertz now, so that is a bump up from the previous Gemini Lake. It's a 10nm chip, it has improved graphics, which is now 24 executional units, but it still is a 6-watt part. So a convertible laptop at 11.6 inches, the screen is IPS, touch screen. You can flip it right around, use it in a tablet mode. So it's really just a change in the chipset. Everything from the previous generation remains, including some of those big flaws like no full-size Type A port, and the screen still has that same dated bezel with the webcam in that position, which is just down here, which is not a great position at all.
Like the previous generation models, we get the same box, so it does have what looks like a Decepticons or Autobots Transformers looking logo, BMAX. The power supply, this one is 24 watts. They do have with it an EU, UK, and US plug. Now the laptop, the weight of it is just 1.1 kilos. It's only 13 millimeters thick, so it's a very good size. It's nice and light and portable. Now the materials used on this laptop, we have alloy on the lid here and around the edges. The hinge right here is metal, and of course it's a 360 convertible hinge. That means you can use it as a tablet. You can flip it right around like so. Now this keyboard, the palm rest, this is made out of plastic. The underside right here, this is metal, and we do have this easy access hatch, which I do like to see on these units. So you can swap out the 256GB SSD, which is a SATA 3 one, for something a little larger, but it must be the 2242mm size, and SATA 3 PCIe SSDs will not work in this. There are absolutely no changes with the keyboard. For an 11-inch laptop, it's not bad. There is no flex or bounce with the keyboard because it's a very slim laptop. Now the function key, you can barely see it in this light depending on how it reflects. They've used this blue color, which I don't like because it makes it very hard at certain angles to see the functions up the top of all of our media controls. Half-size arrow keys, and if I'm typing on it, it's okay. It's not a bad keyboard. It is not backlit, and even at certain angles I do find that the silver keycaps really are not the best design choice here. The touchpad, this one's okay. I wouldn't rate as amazing, but for the finer movements, you can see right now the cursor seems to be alright, but sometimes it does tend to float around a little bit, so we'd definitely be using a mouse, a wireless one if possible. And now looking at our ports, on the right hand side we've got the speaker, micro SD card sit in flush, unfortunately only USB 2 speeds, microphone, then we have micro USB 2.0, yes, ouch, that's dated, that's old, we shouldn't have that there. Micro HDMI is a status LED, and our Type-C port is the only USB port that we have that at least has high speeds. That's USB 3.1, so it supports data, power delivery is also supported, and you can get 4K 60s, the maximum resolution from this, with that Jasper Lake. And there is our power in. So DC with the plug that it comes with. Charge time is somewhere over about 2.5 hours. The battery capacity is only 26 watt hours, and I'll get onto that later, that it's very disappointing in this model. On the left, our headphone socket. This one supports microphones, volume up and down, and power button. Both of these are made out of plastic. They feel okay, I wouldn't call them super high quality, but the buttons themselves do not rattle around, so that is good. Microphone, and then the left loudspeaker. So what do loudspeakers sound like? Here is a sample at 100% volume for you. And our screen, so this screen is an 11.6 inch one, it's IPS. Now it's not fully laminated, so there's a slight gap, but it's not large at all. It's about 0.5 millimeter, you can barely see it. The brightness of this IPS, which is a full HD screen, 16:9 aspect ratio, does top out at exactly 270 nits, which is okay, but considering it's a glossy screen and reflective, it can be a bit of a problem. It picks up a lot of those reflections, as you can see now on my video. The bezels on this, you can see especially that bottom bezel, super dated. It makes it look very old to my eyes. And remember, they've used this design now, I think it's the 3rd year they're doing it. So we had the previous generation of chips, So I even think it started out with the Bay Trail, Gemini Lake, and now, of course, Jasper Lake with it. The webcam location is very poor down here, so it kind of looks up your nose. So here's a sample of what you can expect out of that webcam.
The angle that this webcam is operating, pointing just up your nose, really not flattering, not an amazing image. It's only about 15 frames per second, so it looks very choppy. The inboard microphones, the quality from them, not good either. So poor webcam in the Y11 Plus.
Touch response and accuracy from this screen I find to be good. It seems to be relatively lag-free, and then where you tap, this Windows button also does work, you can see. It seems to get that quite spot on there, the accuracy, when I'm using it. So color reproduction, not amazing. We have only 64% NTSC. sRGB is 92%, which is all right. It's higher than what they claimed it was going to actually be. And then Adobe RGB of 69%. P3 coverage is also 69%. So you can see, especially with NTSC, it is lacking quite a bit in those greens. So it's not a screen for professionals, and I doubt anyone out there that's working and editing photos or video would even be looking at this kind of spec of laptop. It is simply underpowered for that kind of work anyway. If you are wondering about Windows 11 support, yes, you can upgrade and install Windows 11 on this. It will run. It does have the TPM 2.0 installed that we need, okay? And then the CPU is fast enough to run Windows 11, and we've got enough RAM. So that is good. If you want to do that, you can, but it ships just with Windows 10 Home with this particular model. Now, when you look in the device manager, you will see that the CPU, so the system on a chip, which is that Sauron, that's Jasper Lake, the N5100 has 4 cores. They're not threaded at all. So it's just 4 cores. That's it. Maximum turbo is 2.8 gigahertz. And it's a 6-watt part, which severely limits the performance running at only 6 watts here. And that really is the whole bottleneck of this particular system, is that chipset. It's only really for light kind of computing. So we do have an accelerometer on board, one in the keyboard, one for the screen. So that's when you flip it around. You can see that. And the wireless adapter, this is Realtek's wireless AC. Now, I do find that it should be able to get over around about 350 megabits per second, but I've only been able to achieve just quite a bit less than that. You'll see here, just with a real-world test here, with speed test on another unit, I can get well over 300 megabits per second, but this only seems to be able to achieve and tops out at around just over 200. The upload speed, however, is good. Now, the Wi-Fi range and the reception seems to be about 1 bar and less signal strength than what I've seen in other laptops, probably because it's metal covered and it is a smaller unit. So the range isn't amazing on this, or the wireless speed. So it's a bit of a weak Realtek chipset. So here with the scores, if you wanted to run some benchmarks and how does it compare to your current system, I recommend you download Geekbench 5. It's free, run the benchmark, and you'll see if your scores are going to be lower or probably higher than this, because it is, as I mentioned, it's weak chip. It's not very potent. So 600 for the score, just over, is what really this chip gets. Multi-core score, now this actually could be a little bit faster. Now the reason is, if I just take a look at our RAM speeds, they check out, those are fine, which is good, but it is actually running in single channel, the RAM. Now I've confirmed this, it's not dual channel, which would give us better memory bandwidth. The speed, however, 2933 is the maximum the chipset supports, so that area is good. Now, if it was in dual channel, we would see really improved scores. You can see hitting just around 2000, which is still a very low score. So it's not a powerhouse of a system, and you wouldn't expect it to be. It's really just for light computing, a unit like this with this particular chipset. SSD speed, so it's okay for SATA 3. It's not PCI 3 spec, and you wouldn't really need it with this chipset either because, well, it's not a fast chip. That's still going to bottleneck everything. So it gets just over 500 reads with the sequentials and over 400 writes. Pretty much checks out for this size of drive. Now, if it was a 512, then the writes would probably be a little bit faster there. You do get approximately 190 gigabytes on free boot on the C drive. Then what about video playback? So we do have with the Jasper Lake, like the previous generations, native decoding of HEVC and VP9. So this is a very high bitrate file. It's 140 megabits per second that I test out. And you'll see that the playback is smooth, it's fine. And it will be even exactly the same on battery. It handles it, this kind of things, without any problem. So any video files are thrown at it. The Jasper Lake that's in this, the Sauron N5100, seems to handle them all flawlessly. At the beginning, you might get an initial little couple of seconds of stutter. That's it. General day-to-day performance of the system and the touch response does seem quite fast. It doesn't seem to really lag with just your light computing. Now, documents, spreadsheets, basic kind of stuff, it's all right at. What about Chrome performance? So what I will do is just search cars right here, and I will bring up some new tabs with this, and we'll see if it's going to bog down. It could, be a bit laggy, but we'll see what happens here. So I'm just going to open a few up. Scroll through, just go onto the other page there and maybe get a few videos in there if I can, if possible. And we'll see if that is going to cause any problems with the performance. Now, I'm just using touch on the screen, so there's a video. And normally for this kind of task here, wouldn't be too strenuous, but I'm already seeing now with the scrolling with Chrome, it starts to lag a little when it is loading in, especially a lot of those videos there. But normally you can run about 10 tabs, maybe even more, and you won't really run into problems. So switching over to these tabs, there was a bit of a delay then. This is quite image heavy, but the scrolling performance in Chrome seems to be all right. Doesn't seem to lag too much. I'm looking at all these Lexus cars there. That seems fine. And just going between these tabs, I've just accidentally closed one there. That's quick, okay? It's not that bad. So for this kind of use, again, and I stress this a lot in my videos of this kind of tech, which is very low end, these low powered 6-watt chips or even the 10-watt ones, they really are just for these basic kind of needs. You wouldn't be editing video, and they're not even really that good at gaming, which I'll get onto now. Some older titles might be semi-playable, but we'll see how Counter-Strike runs. I have it only set to 720p, and it is on the lowest possible settings. And you can see that the Jasper Lake N5100 absolutely struggling, just 10 frames per second. So I'm not even going to bother playing with it. It just runs horrendously. Terrible performance here for even older light games like this. I mean, just look as I look around here, super laggy, 10 frames per second on a full server. The only thing that's good here might be my ping rate, which, well, is actually a little bit high there too, at around 80 milliseconds. Thermals are one of the very few positives we do have with this particular laptop here. So 84 degrees is the maximum that it will get up to. Now the underside will get quite hot, up to about 45 degrees. So warm, a little almost hot to the touch. That's when you push it gaming. So that's good to see. And of course it is fanless, so it makes absolutely no noise whatsoever. There's no fan screaming away. It's all passively cooled and a silent laptop.
Battery life on this is truly abysmal. It's disappointing. You're only looking at tops around 3 hours, even less if you crank up the brightness, which you have to do because it's not really a bright screen. It is only a 26 watt-hour battery, which just simply isn't enough. I know that this is a thin and light laptop. That is probably the best part about it. Its form factor, the fact that you can convert it into a tablet if you wanted to do so, and it is light. And the touchscreen isn't that bad. It seems to respond quite well to touch. It's the brightness. The bezels at the bottom, super dated, so BMAX did not fix any of the issues from the previous generations because they just reused the same thing. It is just a spec bump. We get the faster Jasper Lake. And yes, Windows feels a little quicker, slightly faster. The RAM is sadly only in single channel. Now, if it was configured to be in dual channel, we would get a slight bump in performance when it comes to multitasking especially. So the keyboard, they didn't make any changes to this either. The silver keycaps for me, I don't think are a good idea, especially when the function keys are painted the actual what you're looking at, the media controls, in a blue color that at certain angles, you can't see them. That is frustrating and annoying. Now, speaking of annoyances with the keyboard, I did discover that if you plug in power delivery to charge this, which it does support, some interference or something is happening that causes keystrokes on this keyboard to sometimes not be registered, which is incredibly frustrating when you're typing with it plugged in to charge. Occasionally there is just one keystroke missing, so a letter will be missing and you get all these typos. As soon as I remove the cable, so it's not being powered then, I don't seem to have a problem. And if you use the DC charger that it includes, which is a 24 watt one, you won't have that issue. It's just with power delivery, if you tend to use that, you'll run into typing problems, which should not be happening with this particular model. So the screen brightness, the screen coverage, the build, the lack of the Type A ports on it, it's all just Type C, the webcam location and the webcam's terrible quality. You probably guessed it. With that battery life especially, I cannot recommend this BMAX Y11 Plus. It's simply not enough that they've just given it the new chip. BMAX should have done a lot more with this model. They could have really improved it and give us a nice small 11.6-inch Jasper Lake laptop. Instead, it is the same issues, just dragged through to the new model, which should not be happening. So thank you so much for watching my review here of the BMAX Y11 Plus. I do hope to see you back in the channel with my next up and coming reviews. So do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.